supposedly had hundreds of dragons. During the war against the Roinar, they sent 300 of them into a single campaign, which means somewhere behind all the dragon lords, magic, enormous volcanic cities, and countless free labor, there had to be an actual system keeping them alive. So I wanted to figure out what that system looked like. How much would hundreds of dragons eat? How many animals, workers, and how much land would you need to support them? And more importantly, did Valeria become an empire because this system worked? Or did it need an empire just to make this system work? Now, before we can feed 100 dragons, I need to fix something. A few years ago, I drank a little bit too much of the Arbor Gold, and I made a video calculating the cost of feeding dragons. I made a few assumptions and compared dragons to crocodiles eating about 5% of its body weight per week, and this eventually gave me a 550-ton Caraxes and a Vagar weighing more than 1,000 tons. So there were some problems, and people were nice about it, for the most part. Dragons are described as fire-made flesh. They fly, fight, stay active in cold weather, and somehow breathe fire. So crocodiles were probably not the best comparison. This time I'm starting with how many dragons Valeria actually had, estimating their size, and then working out how much food animals like that would actually need. So, how many dragons are we feeding? The books never tell us exactly how many dragons Valeria had. We know they could send 300 dragons against Garen the Great, but those were usable war dragons sent on one campaign. There would still have been hatchlings, young dragons, riderless dragons, injured animals, and presumably at least a few that somebody wanted to keep at home. Our boy George R.R. Martin has also described the 40 Dragonlord families as having hundreds of dragons between them. So for the main calculation, I'm going to use 500. If Valeria had 500 dragons, sending 300 to war means they mobilized 60% of the entire population. That leaves 200 dragons behind, which feels like a reasonable amount for all the animals that weren't currently useful in a military campaign. 500 is still an estimate, so I also ran the numbers with 350 and 800 dragons. And as a side note, House of the Dragons claims Valeria once had over 1,000 dragons, so I'll use 1,000 later as a television stress test. The next problem to figure out is how big they actually were. 500 dragons does not mean 500 Vagars. The books give us a few useful comparisons. Moondancer was lighter than a warhorse when she became rideable, young Drogon had a wingspan of about 20 feet, and dragons like Vagar and Balerion were exceptional, even by dragon standards. So rather than treating every dragon as a giant war animal, I built a rough population across different age groups. To estimate their mass, I used giant pterosaurs as a starting point. The largest real flying animals had wingspans of around 10 or 11 meters and probably weighed somewhere around 250 kilograms. Dragons are obviously much bulkier than that, with heavier heads, thicker necks, muscular tails, and substantial hind legs. So I scaled the mass upwards to account for that. That gives us young dragons around a ton, mature dragons around 10 tons, and the handful of truly ancient ones reaching tens of tons. Across the whole population, the average comes out to about 10.6 tons.
Hey Frank, tell me what's going on. Think God's gonna forgive us for the things we've done?
These are still estimates. There's no canonical dragon weigh-in anywhere in the books. And obviously, a 10-ton animal flying normally has some fairly serious problems with physics. So we're also going to assume whatever magic allows dragons to fly is doing some heavy